I'm Sam Clement, the newly elected president and CEO of the Michigan Association of Broadcasters, and I'm thrilled to be bringing you the conversation of music licensing and the role of performing rights organizations, also known as PROs. There are many facets to the radio business and music licensing, and that role that PROs play is an important component of the industry. Today, Jessica Frost, Executive Director of Industry Relations with Broadcast Music, Inc., also known as BMI, is joining us to provide some insight in the role that PROs and specifically BMI play in supporting songwriters by ensuring that they are paid when their music is publicly performed. This includes on radio stations and many other businesses throughout the country. Jessica is a 20-year veteran at BMI. In her role, she develops and cultivates relationships with industry associations representing BMI to various trade associations in the radio, television, hotel, restaurant, and bar, retail, fitness industries, as well as business segments that use music across the United States. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Florida. Jessica, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Sam. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Jessica, BMI has a long tradition of working closely with the radio industry, and a big part of that is based on BMI being founded by radio broadcasters. Tell us a little bit about that history of BMI and how the company was formed.
Sure. So BMI was formed in 1939, and as you mentioned, we were formed by a group of really forward-thinking radio broadcasters, and I'm happy to report that to this day, our board is still comprised of broadcasters. We are currently the largest American performing rights organization representing the public performance copyright of music for millions of songwriters, composers, and music publishers. Many people may not be aware, but the U.S. federal copyright law protects intellectual property creators. And what does that really mean? Essentially, it means that if I write a book, or you write a book, or a screenplay, or a script, or a song, that not only as the creator of that work should you have a say in how that creation is being utilized, but also you should be compensated when it is being utilized. Songwriters, composers, and music publishers essentially join a PRO of their choice, like BMI, and we then ensure that any time that their musical creations are publicly performed, that they are compensated for that performance. How long does a copyright on a song last? Essentially, copyright lasts from 70 years to the death of the owner, or as we call the author of the song. As you all know, that in the last couple of years, we've lost some huge musical greats like Tom Petty and Prince, David Bowie, and John Prine. Essentially, that means that their estate or their family is still receiving royalties for the public performance of their work from 70 years after their death. After that, the work goes into a public domain and it may no longer need a license. I always like to phrase this and let people know that many times where folks are not aware that the songs that they know and love and listen to on Spotify or in the radio are not necessarily written by the artists to perform them. In the music business, we call songwriters the heroes behind the hits. And that's essentially because they don't make money like recording artists do, touring, selling merch, live shows. Their main source of income comes from the licensing fees that PROs like BMI collect from businesses and organizations when their music is publicly performed.
Is BMI the only PRO in the United States, or do songwriters have a choice of who they want to represent them?
In the United States, they do have a choice. Currently, there are 4 PROs in the United States: BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, and GMR. It's important to note that BMI and ASCAP are both not-for-profit companies, whereas CSAC and GMR are for-profit entities. Songwriters have a choice of which PRO they want to represent them, and because of that, each PRO represents a unique catalog of music.
So BMI provides business with blanket license for the public performance of music for their catalog. Can you just explain what a public performance license is and when other licenses may be needed?
Sure. So a public performance is defined in the U.S. copyright law really to say that any music that's played outside of your normal circle of family and friends and is in a public place. So this can mean anything from when music is transmitted to the public via radio, television broadcast, digital service providers, concert venues, sports arenas, restaurants, bars, the list goes on and on. When you really think about it, many of the businesses that we enter every day have music being performed, whether it's live music, featured live bands, or DJ or karaoke, or whether it's background music. So songwriters, composers, and music publishers, they have the exclusive right to play their music publicly and to authorize others to do so under the copyright law. And this is known as the performing right. This was really created to enable and encourage music creators to receive compensation for the music that they create. This is the only royalty that BMI pays. We do not license mechanical or synchronization rights, but I can give a breakdown of when each is used because that may be of interest to this audience.
Absolutely.
So a mechanical license may be needed when a composition is duplicated on a record, a CD, a digital file like iTunes, interactive streaming services like Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, also pay digital mechanicals. A synchronization license that we call in the business a sync license is really when a song is synchronized with the timed synchronization of a visual image. So the best way to think about this is when you're watching TV and you hear an ad and you hear a song you love playing in the background of that ad. They would have had to secure a sync license. In order to secure that type of license, the music user needs to contact basically the music publisher, and they issue that, granting the right to synchronize music compositions to a audio visual image on film or video.
You've kind of touched on it, but what role does BMI play in connecting music creators with music users?
So I like to explain when I'm speaking to audiences about music licensing and the service that we provide, that BMI is essentially the bridge between the creators of music and then the businesses and organizations that want to publicly perform that music. Technically, business owners could go directly to each and every songwriter, composer, and music publisher and negotiate a rate to play their songs in their business. But as we all know, thousands of songs are being played in businesses every day, and it would be extremely time consuming for a business owner and also very expensive. So the service that PROs provide is really providing a blanket music license to the business so they can play essentially millions of songs that BMI represents. They can play those songs as many times as they like, and they pay one flat fee.
Do you need a music license to feature music on your personal website or social media platforms or podcast? Just explain to me how to navigate those guidelines.
Sure, we get this question a lot. If you own and operate a personal website or mobile app and you use copyrighted music, permission must be granted by the copyright owner. In most cases, that permission comes from BMI or the PRO whose music you're publicly performing. And essentially, that license gives you access to use any of the musical works in BMI's catalog. For social media, since most platforms already have licensing agreements with the PROs to cover the music used on their platforms, the users are not typically required to have their own license, but I always recommend it's best just to reach out to BMI or whichever PRO you're utilizing the music of, and make sure that that social media platform that you're utilizing is indeed licensed. The same is true for podcasts. Most of the well-known podcast platforms that host podcasts already have licensing agreements with the PROs to cover the music used on that platform. But I still recommend, just to be sure, to reach out to the PROs and make sure that the necessary licensing is in place. If any of the listeners of this video have questions about music licensing, they can always contact our customer service reps directly at 1-888-689-5264, and they're happy to answer any questions that they may have.
Jessica, just one final question for you. So much of radio is local. Can you just explain BMI's relationship with stations on that local level? How do you work with local radio stations?
Sure. BMI is committed to maintaining strong relationships with all of our customers and, of course, our radio customers as well. We do this in a variety of ways in the radio marketplace. For example, BMI has been a longtime partner with the Michigan Association of Broadcasters, and each year we sponsor your annual high school and college radio stations of the year's award. We end up presenting gold records to the award-winning stations. We love to do partnerships like this because the health of radio depends so much on young people pursuing careers in this direction. So we love to see when young people are passionate about that and want to support that continued growth in the industry. We also support the state broadcasting associations by bringing in up-and-coming BMI artists or songwriters to perform at their industry events. And we also partner with local radio groups on songwriter festivals, bringing in our songwriters to perform at events for the radio listeners.
We appreciate that support, and it's always good to hear that you also are passionate about supporting the next generation of radio listeners and staff. So thank you very much to BMI. Jessica Frost, she is the Executive Director of Industry Relations with Broadcast Music, Inc., also known as BMI. Jessica, thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Sam.